Doing everything right after 60, but something feels off. You wake up in the morning and sit on the edge of the bed a few seconds longer than you used to. Not dizzy, not sick. Just giving your body a moment to feel steady. Later, you're standing in the kitchen while the coffee brews. One hand rests on the counter. Your feet feel slightly numb. It passes. You shrug it off. You've slept in an odd position before. There's no pain. Then it happens again the next day, and again a few days later. Always mild, always brief. Easy to ignore, but hard not to notice. Most people over 60 don't talk about moments like this. They don't seem important enough to bring up, but they're familiar. And they make you pause. You've been doing the right things. You eat reasonably well. You stay active. You try to get good sleep. So when these small changes keep showing up, a quiet question starts to form. Is this just normal for my age, or is it something I should pay attention to? This video isn't here to scare you. Your body isn't failing. There's a natural process behind these moments, something the body does quietly as we get older. It has to do with how blood flow supports the brain throughout the day and night, and how that balance can shift after 60. In some people, these shifts are part of how stroke risk after 60 gradually changes, often in ways that don't feel dramatic at all. We're going to take this slowly. No promises, no extremes. Just a clear explanation of what may be happening, why it often shows up in small, everyday ways, and why noticing patterns like this can be helpful for brain health after 60. If this feels familiar, you may want to keep listening. We'll walk through it together, one step at a time. Number 5, you're doing everything right, but your blood moves differently now. Early in the morning, Tom is standing in his kitchen, waiting for the toaster to pop. He's 68, retired, and lives alone in a quiet neighborhood in Ohio. One hand rests on the counter, not because he feels like he might fall, but because it feels natural to pause for a second. His legs feel a little heavy, not weak, just slower to wake up than his thoughts. A moment passes, and everything feels normal again. This is usually where people shrug and move on. The thought is simple and familiar. I'm getting older. That's probably all it is. And in many ways, that's true. What often gets missed is why these small moments show up even when you're doing the right things. After 60, the body doesn't suddenly break. It just starts adjusting in quieter ways. One of those changes happens in the blood vessels. When we're younger, we're more flexible and quicker to respond. Blood moves smoothly when we stand up, turn, or start walking. As the years go by, those vessels slowly stiffen. They aren't blocked. They aren't damaged. They're simply less springy than before. It's a bit like an old garden hose. Water still flows, but the pressure isn't perfectly even anymore. Sometimes it slows. Sometimes it surges. Blood can behave the same way, especially first thing in the morning or after sitting still for a while. The brain doesn't need strong flow. It needs a steady flow. When that steadiness wavers, even briefly, the body may send small signals. Heaviness in the legs, a slight numbness in the feet, a moment where you naturally pause before moving on. Because these signals pass quickly, they're easy to ignore. But over time, noticing patterns can be helpful. For some people, this shifting flow is part of how circulation changes after 60, including how stroke risk can gradually shift with age, not through dramatic warnings, but through small, repeated moments that don't feel urgent. Noticing doesn't mean worrying. It doesn't mean something is wrong. Simple habits may help support a steadier flow. Standing up a little more slowly. Give your body a few seconds to catch up. Letting the morning unfold instead of rushing it. These aren't treatments. They're small adjustments that respect how the body works now. Your body isn't working against you. It's asking for a slightly different pace. And when you listen, those quiet morning moments start to make more sense. If you've noticed experiences like this yourself, the next part may help put them in context, especially when we talk about what happens later in the day and into the night. Number 4, why these changes often show up at night, not during the day. In the middle of the night, Linda wakes up and sits on the edge of the bed before standing. She's 72, retired, and lives in Arizona. The house is quiet. A small light glows in the hallway. She pauses for a few seconds, the way she's learned to do. Her feet feel slightly unsteady at first. Not enough to alarm her, just enough to make her wait. By the time she reaches the bathroom, everything feels normal again. Moments like this are easy to brush off, especially when the rest of the day feels fine. But after 60, the body doesn't behave the same way at night as it does during the daytime. That difference matters more than most people realize. During the day, your body stays busy. You're moving, eating, drinking, and responding to light and sound. Blood flow tends to stay steady because everything is active and engaged. At night, the pace changes. Blood pressure follows a different rhythm. Breathing slows. The body shifts into a quieter maintenance mode. On its own, this is normal. It's how the body is meant to work. What changes with age is how smoothly the system adjusts during these quieter hours. As blood vessels gradually stiffen, they don't respond as easily to nighttime shifts. Think of the brain like a small town after midnight. It doesn't need a lot of electricity, but it does need a steady supply. If the power flickers, even briefly, certain areas notice it first. That's why some people only notice symptoms at night or early in the morning. Heavier legs when getting out of bed. A bit of confusion that fades by breakfast. A vague sense of being off that's hard to explain and easy to dismiss. These moments often happen when blood flow is slightly less consistent, not because something dramatic is happening, but because the system is quieter and more sensitive. This is one reason why, in some people, stroke risk after 60 tends to show up more during nighttime and early morning hours, not as something you feel coming on, but as a gradual shift in how the brain is supported while you sleep. In certain cases, this is how a silent stroke can develop. Without pain, without collapse, and without obvious warning. None of this means you should be afraid of going to sleep. It simply means nighttime is when patterns become easier to notice. Small habits may help support steadier balance, like staying well hydrated earlier in the day, avoiding rushing out of bed, and keeping sleep routines consistent. These steps don't prevent everything, but they may help the body handle nighttime changes more smoothly. If you've noticed that things feel different after dark or first thing in the morning, you're not imagining it. Your body is responding to a different rhythm. If you're curious why some changes don't feel serious at all, you can stay for the next part, where we talk about why a silent stroke doesn't feel like a stroke and why that misunderstanding is so common after 60. Number 3. Why a silent stroke doesn't feel like a stroke. Robert is sitting at his kitchen table in the late afternoon. He's 70, a retired auto mechanic in Michigan. The newspaper is open in front of him. When his phone rings, he answers, starts to respond, and then pauses. A familiar word doesn't come right away. It's there, just out of reach. He smiles, uses a different word, and the conversation moves on. A few minutes later, everything feels normal again. That's usually where the moment ends. There's no pain, no weakness, no reason to worry, so the thought feels reasonable. That was nothing, just getting older. And most of the time, it doesn't feel serious at all. That's actually why a silent stroke is so easy to miss. A silent stroke doesn't arrive the way people expect a stroke to arrive. There's no dramatic moment, no collapse, no clear emergency. Instead, it often shows up as something brief and subtle, a short lapse in memory, a moment of confusion, a feeling that coordination is slightly off, then back to normal. The reason is pretty simple. Not every part of the brain controls speech or movement. Some areas work quietly in the background. They handle balance, focus, timing, and awareness. When blood flow to one of those areas dips briefly, the brain may stumble for a moment and then adjust. It's like a power flicker in an older house. The lights don't go out, they dim, then come back on. After 60, the brain is especially good at adapting. It reroutes, It fills in gaps. That's a strength, but it can also hide early signals. A silent stroke often doesn't feel like a stroke because the brain works around the change before you fully notice it. Over time, though, small events can add up. Not suddenly, not dramatically, gradually. People may notice they're a little slower in finding words, slightly less steady on their feet, a bit more mentally tired by the end of the day. These changes happen so slowly that it's easy to blame them on normal aging and move on. For some people, this pattern is part of how stroke risk after 60 can quietly show itself, not through one clear warning, but through repeated, low-level signals that don't demand attention. They simply ask to be noticed. Noticing doesn't mean diagnosing anything. It doesn't mean panic. It means paying attention to patterns that repeat, even if they pass quickly. That kind of awareness can support brain health after 60 because it replaces guessing with understanding. If you've ever had moments like Robert's and brushed them off, you're not alone. Most people do. And most of the time, nothing urgent is happening. But understanding why these moments don't feel serious helps explain why they're so often overlooked. If you're curious how everyday routines and even good stress can influence how steady your body feels after 60, you can stay for the next part and decide whether it connects for you. Number 2. Why? Good stress still counts after 60. Mary is standing in her daughter's kitchen in Florida, rinsing dishes while her 2 grandchildren play on the floor behind her. She's 67, retired, and glad to be there. The afternoon has been full in a good way, reading stories, picking up toys, making lunch. She doesn't feel stressed at all. She feels useful. Later that evening, when the house finally quiets down, something feels different. Her body feels heavier than usual. Not sore, not in pain, just more tired than she expected. When she goes to bed, sleep comes, but it's lighter. She wakes once or twice during the night and isn't quite sure why. Most people wouldn't connect those moments. Mary didn't either. In her mind, stress means worry, pressure, or bad news. None of that happened. She was doing something she enjoyed. This is where the idea of good stress can quietly mislead us after 60. As we get older, the body responds not only to emotional stress but to any sustained demand. Physical effort, mental focus, long stretches without rest. Even positive activity asks the nervous system to stay alert and engaged. When that engagement lasts longer than the body can easily recover from, things don't always settle as smoothly as they once did. It's a bit like leaving an engine running steadily for hours. Nothing feels wrong while it's happening, but when you finally turn it off, the system needs time to cool down. After 60, that cooling process often takes longer. Blood pressure, circulation, and the nervous system don't always return to baseline right away, especially later in the day. This can show up in quiet ways: restless sleep, feeling more tired than expected after an active day, waking up without the sense of refreshment you used to have. These aren't signs that something is broken. There are signs that the body stayed on longer than it could comfortably manage. For some people, when days like this repeat, circulation can slowly start to behave a little differently over time. That's one of the subtle factors connected to how stroke risk after 60 can gradually shift, not because staying active is harmful, but because recovery becomes just as important as movement. The adjustment here isn't to do less. It's to pause differently, taking short breaks before fatigue sets in, sitting down for a few minutes between tasks, letting the body reset instead of pushing through every signal. These small changes may help the nervous system settle and support steadier balance later on. Mary didn't stop helping with her grandchildren. She simply started resting for a few minutes between activities. Over time, she noticed her evenings felt calmer again, without doing anything extreme. Being active still matters. Staying involved is still healthy. After 60, the difference is learning where your body's reset point is and respecting it before you feel worn down. If this sounds familiar, you may want to stay for the next part and see how all of this fits together, not as a warning, but as a clearer understanding of what your body may be asking for now. Number one, your body isn't failing. It's asking for different conditions. In the early evening, the house is quiet. The television is on, but you're not really watching it. You're sitting in your chair with your feet flat on the floor, noticing how your body feels now that the day is winding down. Nothing hurts. Nothing feels urgent, but you're more aware of yourself than you used to be. It feels like your body is asking for something a little different. This is often the moment when people turn inward and start judging themselves. Maybe I should be exercising more. Maybe I'm not doing enough. I used to handle days like this just fine. But after 60, what's changing isn't effort. It's conditions. Your body isn't breaking down. It's adapting to time. Blood vessels don't adjust as quickly as they once did. The nervous system takes longer to settle after a full day. The brain still works remarkably well, but it depends more on steadiness than speed. These changes usually happen quietly, without dramatic symptoms, which is why they're easy to misunderstand. Think of it like living in an older house you know well. Everything still works. The lights turn on, the heat comes up, but you've learned that turning on too many things at once doesn't feel right anymore. You space things out, you move a little more deliberately, not because the house is failing, but because it runs better that way now. The body after 60 works much the same way. Small signals like heaviness in the morning, restlessness at night, or feeling mentally drained after a busy day aren't warnings of disaster. They can be signs that your body needs more consistency, more recovery, and fewer sudden demands. Noticing those patterns doesn't mean assuming something is wrong. It means listening. Listening may help support brain health after 60 inches practical ways, keeping daily rhythms steady, allowing more space between activities, letting rest be part of staying active rather than the opposite of it. These adjustments don't guarantee outcomes, and they aren't fixes. They're ways of working with your body instead of pushing against it. For many people, this shift in approach ends up mattering more than any single habit over time. It's what helps the body stay balanced, as circulation and stroke risk after 60 can gradually shift. Not through fear, not through doing more, but through understanding. If there's one thing to carry with you, it's this. Your body can still respond when you give it the right conditions. Not perfect conditions, just the ones that fit where you are now. Before you move on with your evening, you might pause for a moment and ask yourself a simple question. What small signal has your body been repeating lately, and what might it be asking for instead? If this way of thinking feels helpful, you're welcome to stay connected here. Not for promises or quick answers, but for steady explanations that respect your experience and what your body is capable of now.